Hi everyone, welcome to this Incubeta Ignite video. I'm Amy Jackson, I'm Business Director at Incubeta, and in today's session we're going to focus on retail and the role digitized journeys and consumer behaviour play, especially since the pandemic has really challenged the way that this vertical operates. So I'm so excited to announce that we have India Doyle from Canvas8 joining us today. India has a pretty amazing job. So she's Senior Commissioning Editor at Canvas8, where she leads research on behavioural and cultural change for Canvas8 Library. So in short, India basically ensures that global brands stay connected to their audience. And India has written about culture, beauty and fashion for publications including One Granary, Dazed and Confused and Dapper Dan, and covered fashion weeks for Show Studio and Wonderland. So welcome, India. It's great to have you with us. To kickstart us, could you give us a quick brief of Canvas8?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. Canvas8 is the global leader in behavioural insights, operating out of London, New York, and LA. So we help organisations understand people so they can make better strategic decisions. And our insights inspire innovation in some of the world's leading brands, agencies, and organisations. We work with leading retailers, including Target and Asda, to keep them stay one step ahead of the behaviours impacting the ways people make purchases. And Canvas8 is also advising one of the big tech firms on its opportunities in the e-commerce ecosystem. So looking at people's behaviours in the intersection of shopping, technology, advertising, and retail.
Nice, thanks, India. And just to point out as well, it's such an important tool that we use at Incubeta. It really helps us to kind of keep track of consumer trends on a micro and a macro level, which the importance of which is sometimes often overlooked. So we're going to kickstart, but obviously, this is a massive understatement. But as we know, the retail industry has been impacted last year, continues to be impacted this year, and I don't want to talk COVID in this chat. Very much want to keep it positive and looking forward. So looking at where we are now, let's start there. India, do you have any top 3 key trends that you're seeing impacting the retail industry currently?
Yeah, so as you say, there's a lot going on in the space, and the pandemic has definitely kind of impacted the retail landscape. And one of the kind of key spaces we are seeing that is digitized journeys. So this trend is kind of about how physical spaces with digital elements can ease navigations for shoppers. So, the high street has had had to kind of really pivot very fast in order to respond. And the implications of that are really long term. So 79% of UK retailers believe that the pandemic is going to bring changes to how retail property is leased and the terms on which it's occupied. And this is similarly the same with UK consumers, who basically say that shopping online will be the new normal post-pandemic. That's 64% of UK adults say that, and 42% said that they won't return to the high street at all. So that's kind of huge, and whether or not those stats are absolute, like we're saying, those kind of behaviours likely to stick around. And just to kind of dig into this slightly a bit more before I go into the next one, the pandemic has meant that more people are turning to online shopping. And what's kind of interesting here is that older adults are using online for the first time. So, in April 2020, suddenly you saw an uplift with one survey finding that 1 in 3 people who had done their last grocery shop online, who were aged over 56, had ordered that batch of groceries for the first time. So, kind of huge uplift in terms of audience adoption for digital shopping there. And then this mass digitization across the board is setting new precedents for consumer care in terms of safety, in terms of personalization, and also in terms of convenience. So that's really going to impact what people expect from physical retail moving forward. And just to kind of look at where that's already going, if you think about Amazon's just launched its first completely contactless supermarket in London just this week. So yeah, loads to look out for there. The second kind of trend I wanted to highlight is signaling solidarity. So essentially people are using their spending power to show solidarity with brands and businesses that they care about. That's kind of driven by the fact that people want to take action against inequality and lockdowns have really revived community value in the face of adversity. So Britain spent over 1.1 billion on Small Business Saturday, with 48% saying it was a deliberate decision to support their regional economies after a difficult year. So they're kind of looking for brands to demonstrate that in response as well. And that's creating new forms of dialogue and accountability between brands and their audiences. Also creating a kind of opportunity for values-driven disruption in retail. For example, bookshop.org is an Amazon competitor that spotlights on independent bookshops. So that's kind of happening. That's a really interesting new trend. And then there's also sustainability struggles. So people are just finding ethical shopping really difficult. There's a real difference between the intention and desire versus the capability to deliver. And, you know, sustainable consumption kind of took a backseat on a cultural level during 2020, which is not necessarily surprising, but actually people's like personal response to the climate change didn't change. Actually, they still feel very invested, and the pandemic kind of spotlighted on the personal responsibility that they have. So people are recycling more, kind of digging into it. And so they're kind of getting a bit wary of corporate greenwashing and looking to like hold brands and businesses accountable for their like climate actions. So yeah, those are the three kind of main trends.
Amazing, thank you. And yeah, I think definitely on that latter point, people just have more time just to look more ethically and to think more ethically, and you know, especially now that everything's kind of shifted online, there's so much more material and collateral out there to educate and inform people. So you know, with this joint time and effort spent researching, it's no wonder that brands are having to kind of step up this sustainability messaging just to kind of keep ahead of the curve. We'll touch on that later, but bring it back to digitized journeys. So let's dig a little bit deeper on that. With the shift from brick and mortar to online, we know that consumers' journey has massively changed, and social shopping has been brought to the forefront of brands' minds. What are your views on this, and especially the role that it plays?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about social shopping is it's kind of the opportunity to like give shoppers what they want, you know, right now. And it's really serving as a way to like bridge that action intention gap within a kind of entertainment format. So what we've seen during lockdown is that there's so many ways in which people are looking to kind of connect and have more social experiences around doing the things that they love. So again, this was happening before the pandemic, but the pandemic obviously closed down the traditional routes to being able to, you know, go to the shop with your friends. So instead, people have really, especially younger audiences, have really started to crave different forms of experiencing and discovering the brands they love. So they're kind of demanding like the immediacy from the brands that they're shopping with, and looking for inspiration in new places. So, you know, McKinsey analysts found that influencers, peers, and TV are actually all more likely to inspire a fashion purchase than a brand website or in-store staff. And we're seeing this kind of natural progression in e-commerce then to kind of more influencer-led engaging experiences. So Shopify partnering with TikTok was a really interesting example of that, where shoppers were able to like buy directly through TikTok videos. You know, so Shopify like can't necessarily compete with Amazon on super fast delivery times, but they can kind of provide that immediacy for digital natives. And similarly, yeah, I mean, there's loads going on in the space. So it's just like super interesting to look at people like Klarna, who launched their Klarna Lifestyle, which is a kind of digital fashion show from a global payment service that combines the buy now, pay later structure with live entertainment and social shopping. So that's a kind of like influencer-led format where people can watch in a QVC style and then buy directly through the app. And then yeah, there's also, that's a kind of like an evolution of things like, for example, the shoppable posts on Instagram and Facebook also revamping their shops feature, where you've seen like for a while that people have kind of wanted to see exactly what they wanted and then be able to shop it directly. But this kind of just brings in a more community-based and engaging style.
Yeah, there's definitely something around the experience, like shopping and experience, and you know, being able to link different kind of lifestyles to one way of doing something. You know, so if you're shopping, then suddenly you can be in a fashion show, buying straight from the red carpet. You know, if you're online just kind of browsing, then you can really become a deeper part of that journey. I mean, I was just thinking then when you were talking, India, how much has changed, because I used to go into a shop and look at the mannequins, and that would tell me what I should buy. I would, you know, the shop windows would be very much like my influencer, and just seeing how that's all changed and how it's all linking, and it's all just becoming, you know, one huge experience. There's no difference between it now. It's really fascinating. So yeah, you know, just moving on to this shift in consumer awareness, I guess, that you've just spoken about. I would argue that customers know now more than ever what they want, and actually have much more available to them than they did before. And again, just touching on COVID, the reason being is because now, you know, there's so much appetite online, and there's a lot of new businesses that have been launched. And one of the areas that we've really noticed catapult within the last 12 months is that consumers are becoming more and more conscious of ethics when buying products. So touching on your sustainability message before, but even things around the awareness of Black Lives Matter, as an example, also having a huge impact on retail as well. So I guess some question here is, have you seen any trends within the sector which shows an adoption to signalling solidarity for consumers?
Yeah, and there's actually like two really interesting ways that brands kind of responding to this. The first is a sort of like a pass the mic style form of communication, where you're seeing brands actually like give away their space to enable other brands to kind of speak. We saw this, you know, with Channel 4 giving airtime to kind of local businesses with their great high street comeback, kind of this like very tangible, like moving to the side to allow other voices to speak on their behalf when brands don't feel able to kind of speak directly to something. And we're also, you know, Heinz did that too with kind of donating some of its prepaid space to local Canadian businesses when it was like us a means to support that. But kind of alongside making space for other brands and voices, we're also seeing, you know, like financial backing and quite like tangible commitments in terms of, you know, especially in response to the Black Lives Matter protests in the summer. We've seen brands like Glossier just donate, you know, like $500,000 to organizations focusing on combating racial injustice. But alongside that, with consumers kind of calling out for consistency in that response, there's also been campaigns like the Pull Up for Change campaign, which made sure that external brand commitments were being echoed in terms of like their internal team diversity. So and seeing brands respond to that by acknowledging where they have work to do and kind of like just being quite transparent and really bringing in the consumer to that process, and like actually engaging with a constant dialogue in terms of how they can do better when they're failing and kind of take things forward. So I think that the most interesting thing is actually the evolution of like the conversation and brands behaving like humans and kind of having much more emotional responses to these kind of challenges.
Yeah, it's nice to see brands it's kind of looking at, you know, who's behind the brands, who are themselves humans and themselves consumers, and thinking more around what would they want to see from a brand rather than it just being based on figures and numbers and revenue. So still staying on the topic of ethics, there's definitely a rise of importance when it comes to sustainable shopping. Would you say that there are more noticeable generational differences or trends when you look at the rise of like secondhand shopping or like conscious consumerism, for example?
Yeah, so there's actually, I mean, a lot of people talk about Gen Z, and that's kind of always been like a group that's touted as really driving some of this sustainable behavior. But the challenge for them is that even though they have the intention, they don't necessarily have the income to kind of be able to support longer term kind of like investment pieces, especially within like the luxury space. So there's, you know, we're still seeing things like fast fashion is booming during lockdown because it is just a more accessible access point. So even though, you know, we've seen like Gen Z love thrifting, and there's kind of like there's Depop, and that kind of like there is a lot of resale that is booming. When it comes to making that transition from, let's say, secondhand to luxury, there's still kind of like a bit of a gap there, because the price point is just always going to be a barrier. Whereas for like older generations, for example, among the boomer group, they are actually driving kind of a lot more of the greener behaviors across the board, and that's because they have high dispensable income. They have more flexibility in general, so that they can actually increase adoption and kind of act on their values and beliefs in the way that younger consumers might not. But there was a piece of research essentially that highlighted that in labeling flawed food with kind of ugly labels, it actually increased consumption of those like flawed products. So if you think about where kind of retailers can start tapping into and allowing Gen Z to like act on their sustainable desires, if you think of something like in the supermarket, just tapping into like that quirky thing and allowing Gen Z to buy ugly products, it taps into the kind of like sustainable desires, it taps into their kind of like authentic non-perfect general aesthetic choices, and so offers kind of like a fun and different way to combat food waste that normally you wouldn't think of like a retailer as being able to access like Gen Z in that way.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think it goes back to that human way of thinking and the consumer way of thinking, that once you brand something and you make it almost cool to like, like wonky vegetables, it just becomes a thing, it becomes a trend, and kind of then everybody wants to say that they're an advocate of it. So that's really interesting. I can definitely see how the sustainability message, especially with food, can be heightened through initiatives like that. Gosh, India, I could talk to you all day about this. But just to jump into the last topic of conversation, and this is totally open to your interpretation here, but to leave off on a positive, what about the retail industry really excites you most at the moment? Are there any innovations or developments that you're looking forward to seeing over the coming year?
Yeah, so I think in terms of technology, like there's just loads of exciting stuff happening with AR in retail, and there's so many opportunities there for kind of creative storytelling, for enhanced like transparency in terms of allowing people to access way more information in store through their phones, kind of heighten the discovery, and also like for the way in which it's going to shift buying behaviors from, for example, or is already starting to, people are much more comfortable about making big ticket purchases if they can see, for example, how the sofa is going to look in their home before they make that purchase online. We're seeing that, also with cars. So there's loads of like, kind of like it's essentially bridging that, I guess, imaginative space, and allowing people just to be much more kind of, it's bridging the gap between like physical and digital spaces in quite creative ways. So I think that's really cool. There's also quite an interesting thing that's happening in terms of online used to be all about convenience, like it was solving that kind of main challenge. But as people have found themselves with more time, there's a kind of interesting playful thing that's happening with the idea around anticipation, so that you don't necessarily, even though like loads of brands are pushing for kind of instant delivery, and that's like, prime set the agenda, and those brands are working on that. But we saw like Heinz ran a campaign based around the kind of the virtue of patience, because one of the key challenges that they identified was that people get really annoyed with their ketchup bottles. So they ran a campaign.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah, I can see that now, especially the glass ones.
And so exactly. So instead of making that a kind of problem for them, actually they got creative, and they ran a campaign where people had to wait 57 minutes to access their website. And if you waited 57 minutes, then you got like a family burger kit or something. And I think we're seeing a lot. We already know that like subscription behaviors are there, and there's kind of self-gifting drivers that people really want to treat themselves by buying things that are delivered to them in nice ways. So tapping into that kind of anticipation moment and thinking about like, how do you actually, it doesn't have to be a problematic thing that you have to wait for something anymore, and actually playing with that. I think, yeah, there's just some kind of like quite exciting creative opportunities that brands could tap into there. So excited to see what other people do.
Just on that, actually, do you think that because, you know, everybody kind of became very patient last year waiting for deliveries because, you know, we were all really conscious of the impact of distribution centres and delivery drivers, etc. Do you think that as lockdown starts to ease this year and we kind of get back into the you know, expectation of ordering something today and getting it, you know, tonight kind of thing, do you reckon that that's going to change over the next like 12 months as we start to see?
I think there's going to be, I mean, I guess like it takes a few months, you know, to build a habit. So I think people's expectations in terms of like very super quick delivery have kind of been set, you know, over the last year, that has become a norm. And I think that for some people and in certain things, like for example, with maybe more practical items, that kind of instant access is quite likely to stick. But there is also a kind of there's a trend towards like minimalism and slow living, and people kind of like really embracing the art of slowness. And so again, it's potential that some brands can play with that a bit more. But I think, and people might, you know, I think people will go into shops in order to kind of look for more slow experiences that are community based and you know, connect people to culture in a way that the delivery can't do. So yeah, but I think we will see that kind of expectation hang around, and we're seeing loads of challenger brands kind of banking on that and promising, you know, 15-minute delivery for your groceries and stuff. So I think people will get comfortable with that. And yeah, definitely.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm best of friends with my DPD driver at the moment, so you know, I hope that relationship doesn't end this year. India, thanks so much for speaking with me. It's been so great to learn from you. I wish we had longer, and I'm sure we'll definitely see a bigger evolution of these themes over the course of the year. So really excited to maybe pick back up with you again later on, just to kind of touch base on you know, what we've seen really come to fruition. Big thanks to everyone for watching, and obviously if you'd like to know more about Canvas8 or the retail landscape, then we've got plenty of links for you in the description below. So thanks and goodbye.